Hello all, welcome in to the Anti-Stall Racing League here, and we are here for the IMSA series today, round number 1, our opening round of the season. It's all kicking off once again, we absolutely love it, and I'll tell you what, we have an absolutely amazing race lined up for yourself. Indianapolis Motor Speedway is the track we are at. We are at the road course configuration, the new one, not the old one from 2009. So that does mean we do have that lovely little final couple of corners, the little complex arena-style section that a lot of people seem to very much dislike. I am one of your commentators today, Ava, and I am joined by the ever-lovely Gerard.
Hello, hello.
Mate, how you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. Back in from work, slap on the stream. Been excited for this one for about a month now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the way that this series is going to work, obviously it's an IMSA style series, so we've got multi-class. Is that for the first time in ASR history?
Yep, first time we've ever had multi-class in Anstall. So this is going to be crazy. Look at them all leaving the pits there in a line. Oh man, it's a glorious sight.
It is indeed. Now, the two classes that we do have for you today is the GT3s, who are currently out in qualifying right now. 12-minute qualifying for GT3 only, and then a little bit of a break just as we switch up between GT3 and P2, where they will also have another 12 minutes to get out on track and set some very quick lap times indeed. Obviously, we're expecting the LMP2s to be quicker than the GT3 cars, and I believe we will see that in terms of the timing screens. I want to say from the media day, it almost looked like there was about 7 to 8 seconds worth of lap time in these cars difference. So it'll be interesting when it comes to the hour-long race that we have ahead of us. What will be happening regarding strategy? Obviously, big thing in endurance racing, multi-class racing in general. You know, you've got 2 races going on at the same time, so you guys watching will be not only watching this first race, as the GT3s will be racing around the track. At the same time the GT3s are pounding around the track, you're also getting a second race on at the exact same time in LMP2. And it's going to cause some absolute carnage. There's going to be people probably sending it 4 wide at some point if there's 2 GT3s battling and 2 LMP2s battling together. I would imagine that both of them trying to get through as fast as possible. We will see that happening. But yeah, I mean, I am excited. It's multi-class racing. It's always fun in multi-class. The GT3s are always going to be close. I would imagine to see the lap times between all these drivers to be very, very tight indeed. If the media day was anything to go by, I would imagine that we're going to see sort of 1 second, maybe even sort of, you know, 2 seconds separating all of our drivers and 1 second maybe separating like the top 15. Maybe that's me being a bit ambitious, but you know.
No, I
want to see it.
I think we should totally hope for that. I think there's a lot of these drivers here today that are incredibly high I ratings, and you know, the differences get closer and closer to each other the higher you get as well. So the difference between sort of a 3.5K guy, I-rating guy, is the difference between a 3.5K and a 4K is way smaller than the difference between a 1.5K and a 2K.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, even though you have those I-rating differences in a league like this, for example, if we take a look at some of our drivers, the driver we're on board with right now, Adam Hedgecock, he's 2.7K I-rating. Now, I-rating doesn't tell the full story. You know, we don't know how much of that is him having unfortunate incidents and therefore the I-rating isn't high. But in comparison to the driver ahead of him, at least in terms of qualifying as it stands right now, Tim Perry's at 3.5K and is already gone pretty much 5/10ths faster than what Adam has managed to do. Now, we don't know whether or not that was a perfect lap from Adam. Obviously, he could have made mistakes, all the rest of it. But yeah, I think what we'll see is we'll probably see a natural progression in terms of these drivers who have these sort of above 3K I rating being up there and relatively competitive at least in terms of, with each other. And then anyone below that sort of 3K mark is also going to have sort of a battle within themselves. So we're probably going to end up seeing sort of inter-driver rivalries form throughout the season. That always tends to happen in league racing, let's be honest. You always see it where, you could have, for example, right now, we're looking at, who is it? Let's take, for example, car number 88 and number 83. So that is Bernardi and Perry, respectively. Bernardi, 7.1 KI rating, by the way. So, very quick driver in his own right. And currently holding the top time. But Tim Perry behind him, 3.5K as we mentioned. 0.2 difference. So, between the two of them. And you wouldn't think so given that I rating difference. And just as I say that, Ryan slots himself in between the two of them. So, there's now only 0.2 separating the top three already in qualifying. When we said it was going to be close, I mean, that's what we're talking about. And then, I don't know where Raul found that lap, by the way. Currently P1 with a 123.3. But that is one heck of a lap. I'm not sure if he managed to get like a draft off someone there, but he's just managed to put himself 0.5 quicker than Bernardi, who is currently sitting in P2. Now, as I say, there will be... Qualifying is not going to be the be-all, end-all for this series. We're going to see the qualifying results. Yes, it will set your start, and obviously, you want to be as high up as possible. You want to try and avoid being mid-pack where you can, so you can avoid those early incidents. But the other thing as well is, in a multi-class series, you're actually going to have to worry about the faster cars overtaking you if you're a GT3, and likewise if you're an LMP2, you've got to worry about the slower traffic also being an issue, and like, how can I get past safely and quickly without making a hash of it?
Thinking about that though, I think this track is particularly suited to that. I think that's going to be more of a factor when we come to later in the season in a few races time. We have 2 races in a row, one at Belle Isle and one at Long Beach.
Yeah,
that's going to be it's going to be interesting. So I think we've started them off fairly tame here.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's always, I think, in terms of the big venues that we talk about, we talk about the way that the grading system works for tracks, right? There's the FIA, I'm sure you know them, you love them, you hate them, whatever your opinion is. They grade these tracks based on, what type of cars can they handle. And depending on what type of cars they can handle depends on, obviously, what they can have racing there. So you look at, like, the Grade 1 tracks or your F1 style tracks. Those ones for multi-class racing are going to be, like, ideal because there's so much space. There's so much runoff, there's so much space. And normally the circuits themselves have so many different locations to make passes in terms of multi-class that those sorts of tracks are the ones that you look at as providing not necessarily boring multi-class racing, but it's not as exciting as maybe going to somewhere like you mentioned, Belle Isle or Long Beach, where it's effectively a street circuit, right? It's very narrow. Yeah, Long Beach is a street circuit.
It's in a car park.
Yeah, pretty much. And, it's very much then, I think, at least in terms of the traffic aspect of it, the P2s are going to have to be very careful when they go to make moves in these tighter tracks. They're going to have to think about, right, if we're, say, for example, we're coming out of the... I'm trying to think of the Long Beach track off the top of my head, but like, you've got the fountain section, right?
Oh yeah.
So you go around the fountain, and then you've got the double right-hander before you get onto a little bit of basically like a mini straight, pretty much, is what that is. When you approach a GT3 car, if you're approaching a GT3 through the fountain section, you're now having to wait until after the 2 right-handers before you can actually get past safely. Like, you can try and make the move between the 2 right-handers if you're daring enough, but it's very risky. It is very, very risky. Like, we're going to see a lot of LMP2 drivers who might get a little bit frustrated with the slower classes of cars. And likewise, we'll probably see a lot of GT traffic getting annoyed at the LMP2s for, you know, making moves where, to be honest, there probably wasn't room. But, you know, it's one of those things, isn't it, that with multi-class racing, there's a bit of give and take. You know, they always say that in multi-class, the traffic gives, the traffic takes away. So, again, it's going to be a talking point throughout the entire season, I am sure. And yeah, it's just, there's a lot to unpack with a multi-class season. There's a lot to unpack for a multi-class season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe we're nearly coming up to the halfway point of qualifying now. There's 5 minutes left to go in the GT3 class, in which case then the LMP2s will be released. So we're not having both classes on track at the same time for qualifying. But it's going to be interesting to see how much quicker the LMP2s are than the GT3s. And maybe try and do a bit of quick math and figure out how many times they're going to get lapped. Because, you know, for the leader, that's going to be how many times you've got to do the lapping.
Yeah. And, you know, I think if any of these LMP2s and GT3 guys are sort of, you know, friendly with each other, maybe even race for similar teams, I think that is definitely something that they've worked on, that they've simulated, maybe even done full stints of, to get a rough idea, right? If it goes green pretty much all the way and there's not too much action, like, how many times are we likely to come across each other? And, you know, I think that is something that the GT3 guys, at least, are gonna find, I think, initially when they first get started, that if they're not used to multi-class racing, that's sort of going to be your biggest thing, is making sure that not only are you focusing on, you know, what's ahead of you and trying to go forward, you're also focusing on what's behind you, just to make sure that none of the P2s are, you know, being hyper aggressive. But coming up near the end, anyone who is on a lap now for the GT3s, I believe, will get to finish it, but anyone who crosses the line in the next couple of seconds will indeed be going back to the pit lane. However, it does seem like everyone is pretty much coming back to the pits for the GT3s, so I believe, unless there's any final changes, as I believe that was Thomas there in P6 just set a lap time to get him a little bit higher up into the very low 124s. So it looks as though top 5 are going to be relatively close, with the exception of maybe Raul with that 123.3, which I still don't quite understand how he pulled that one off, if I'm honest,
yeah,
in comparison
mad,
to where everyone else is. Like, he is half a second ahead of Ryan Martin, who we know is fast in his own right. And then he's faster than a guy who has almost 5k more I rating than him. By, like, another, what's that, like, yeah, about another half second. So, mental. Absolutely mental.
I mean, you know, another factor is this track, you know, it's a more recent rescanning of a track, so things are different. So everybody's had a similar amount of practice time on this, I would have thought.
Yeah, obviously the people who have more time available to them, a bit more free time available to them, will obviously be able to dedicate themselves more to, you know, getting out there on track and practicing, especially those who enjoyed the Indy road course anyway. You would imagine that they sort of know the layout. The layout hasn't changed too much. I think it's just the surface textures have changed a little bit. And yeah, I think in terms of what people know, maybe there's a couple things that have changed, such as like the curbing. So, for example, through the chicanes, going on to what I would say is effectively what the Americans love to call a back straight. You know, they're halfway through the lap, you have that one straight that's not on the start-finish line. It's like on the other side of the course, so you kind of just call it that. I would imagine that the chicane there has had some curbing updates, which might make that actually a little bit nicer as we see all the P2s lining up, getting ready to go. And I'll tell you what, Gerard, these cars are the ones that I'm most excited to see in qualifying, because if you've never seen an LMP2 full attack on a road course, it is a sight to behold. They are so quick.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's the first time we've run these cars in a series as well, so it's going to be new to everyone here. Of course, you know, we do have the own Ansel Racing teams that we do race these things in, but we've never actually run them in a league, so it's going to be really, really interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, and it's you know, I think these guys, I'm gonna throw out some predicted lap times, right? I'm gonna throw something out there, and we're gonna see how close I am, right? I'm predicting, if we're saying the GT3s were 123s, right? I think LMP2, I wouldn't put it past them to get into the 114s, maybe the 113s on a really good lap, with a bit of slipstream involved in there as well.
Guess we'll find out.
I know a 115 is definitely possible. We've seen that before in the media day. So I want to see if anyone, like, tries to, you know, says, no, we were holding back in the media day, you know, we weren't full pace in the media day. Now that this is the real deal, this is what we've got. But I would assume that they are about to get underway. I would imagine they're all just waiting for the green to drop for these guys. The other thing, though, as well, is if these guys aren't used to driving in LMP2, the way that the engine is cooled, obviously, if you're stood still, like these guys are for, you know, a couple minutes, you may find that actually your engine is already pretty warm and toasty by the time you do your outlap.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
so
everybody in iRacing has at one point, you know, parked themselves in the pit, not gotten out of the car, gone to get a drink and come back with an engine blown.
Yeah, it's not the nicest feeling, admittedly. I still remember there was the whole LMP2 thing with the cars spontaneously combusting at one point at Le Mans.
Yes.
That apparently has since been fixed, so these guys can use the curbs a little bit more aggressively than they used to. Also, as we see one of the P2s flashing there as they go up to the back of the queue. That's one thing I'm imagining we're going to see a lot of as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Is LMP2 is flashing the GT3s constantly to say, hey, I'm here, let me through, please. I have another P2 chasing me, and this is very uncomfortable. But yeah, I mean, what it means for the grid at least is, we'll talk about the grid more in warm-up, I'm sure, but the GT3s, I think even if you don't set a lap time in LMP2 for, you know, whatever reason, I believe you will still be able to start at the back of the P2 grid. I don't think you'll start at the back of the GT3
Yeah,
grid.
it's too dangerous to start the P2s behind the GT3s because of how much faster they are. Like, if you can imagine a horde of GT3s all coming to the first corner, and then you being just behind them.
Yeah, you're braking so much later in comparison to everyone else, and then, yeah, it could cause absolute chaos. But first man on track, Lorenzo Castellani, he was very eager. Very, very eager.
Something really interesting I just noticed, actually, from the GT3 qualifying. Not a single one of them crashed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just scrolled back through the telemetry. I don't think a single GT3 crashed during qualifying.
Well,
yeah.
Hopefully that can continue into the race. Now you've probably jinxed it.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you're the one with the curses. You dish them out like anything.
That is true. that is true. That is true. I do curse pretty hard. It's... I don't want to say it's a skill, because that's very much the wrong wording. It's an unfortunate thing of being a commentator, I believe. It's... Any commentator, they will have something that when they say it, or they're on board with someone and like they're on like a specific camera even, like something will happen. But here we are going into turn 1 with Lorenzo on their lovely onboard shot of these P2s, and one thing you'll notice is just how aggressive these cars are, as well as how tight that cockpit is as well. It's not... The cars themselves seem relatively big, but when you actually take into account the way that the cars are built, the driver's packed in there pretty tightly.
Lorenzo's setting purple first sector as well and not getting it taken away from him yet. So he's doing well, even though he's the first car out.
What I would imagine is we will see, obviously, as usual, we'll see later on through the session that the times will start to come down as the track gets a bit more rubbered in. The P2s, I think, are going to have more grip available to them than the GT3s had for qualifying, obviously as nature of just being the later cars.
Yep. So,
first time on board for Lorenzo, we're going to see what the representative time is. Coming up to be a 1:15, I believe that was. 1:15.757. It's the first time out. I might have been a little bit off with my predictions. They may or may not need to find 2 or 3 seconds to get to where I was predicting. But hey, it can happen.
Oh, we got a crash there.
A couple of cars.
That was Aiden putting it into the wall and going back to pit lane.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether or not that was I need to stop the car like right now because like, you know, family emergency or whatever.
Yeah,
but he seemed to just go straight on. Didn't even take the first corner and just went straight on into the wall and then, you know, abrupt stop, escape back to the pit lane and go out for another lap. But I am curious, how many LMP2s do we actually have with us today? 12, 17 by my count. 17 P2s and 24 GT3 cars. That's a lot of cars.
Yeah, yeah, it totally is.
That's a lot of car out there on the track. And eventually, what I will imagine, like as we get into the sort of near the end of the race, there will be so many cars just in so many different positions that it will be very difficult for anyone to really follow along without the aids that we have here up in our lovely commentary booth.
Yes.
Or, you know, the aids that you guys have on screen as viewers. You know, you get to see the lovely timing tower with, you know, all the positions of everyone currently on track. Yeah, we can bring up the track map so you can see where those drivers are. And yeah, we just have all these lovely things that we can do thanks to the SDK, you know, the lovely software that it is. And I just want to say that Alessandro right now, number 46, purple through sector 2, yellow through sector 3 though, so I don't know whether or not there was a little bit of a mistake. But they are currently our fastest driver with a 1:15.6, so potentially an improvement on their time about to come up. But Dylan van der Lands, let's see what he is capable of. Don't know whether or not he is up on his time. We'll have to wait and see when he comes across the line in the next couple of corners. I will say, if you are used to the 2009 layout of this circuit, this bit will always catch you off guard, as Dylan does pull into the pit lane. Maybe doing a bit of pit lane practice if he hasn't managed to do that. As we see a race control notification there, that there has been a warning to car number 93 for causing an avoidable incident. So I don't know
Sebastian
if that was
van der Heuvel. That is car number 93.
And car number 18 was Miguel, currently sat in P13. So I don't know what happened there, but we like to keep everyone informed as to what's going on, both here in the actual race as well as behind the scenes. Helps give you guys a better idea as to what the grid may look like and whether or not anyone has any sort of time penalties moving forward into the race at the moment. I don't think, obviously, anyone will. It was just a warning, as we said. So, not much else being done. Just hey, just make sure you're keeping it on track, keeping it respectful. But I think now we're starting to look at the timings of these LMP2 cars and realizing that in terms of closeness, yeah, there's a lot of drivers close, but in terms of how it was in comparison to GT3, I think the gaps are definitely a lot bigger when there are any gaps.
Well, I mean, let me open up the GT3 board again and we'll take a look at the difference here.
So we've got GT3, with the exception of Raul, who was 0.5 quicker than anybody else, mega lap. We've got P2 to P11 separated by a second, and then down to 14th is separated by 1.2 seconds.
And compare
pretty
that,
much.
Compare that to the LMPs as we stand right now. We've got top 5 separated by top 6 separated by a second.
Yeah. And again, if we do the same thing that we did with the GT3s in terms of, at the moment, Alessandro there is 0.4 quicker than everyone else. So if we say a bit of an outlier lap in comparison to what everyone else is doing, then we get a little bit closer. We go from P2 to P8 within a second. So, it's going to be definitely interesting to see how the battles play out within LMP2. Obviously, being quite downforce reliant cars as well. We don't know whether or not there will be any sort of changes made there regarding, are they going to suffer battling together? Whereas obviously the GT3 cars aren't necessarily massively aero dependent, they're more mechanical grip, so battling is always close in GT3, whereas LMP2 you notice the cars, while still close, obviously everyone's using the same chassis, they're using the same engine. The setups may be slightly different, so the aero may be slightly different, but for the most part they're going to be pretty spot on with each other. So it comes down to driver skill at the end of the day. Obviously in GT3 you've got so many different platforms. You've got Audis, Porsche, BMW, Ferrari, all of it. And we're seeing the top 5 in GT3 dominated by the Porsche at the moment. So Porsche seems to be the marquee to be in terms of GT3s around Indy road course, but I'm sure throughout the season that will balance itself out to be, pretty even across all the manufacturers, I would imagine.
Yeah, and on that
Or at
note,
least all the ones we have represented.
on that note, drivers aren't allowed to change their cars throughout the season either. So whatever car they've joined in today is the car they have to stick with.
Obviously, for the LMP2 guys, not as much of a deal as, who is that? Lorenzo Castellani, who I believe races for the same team as Alessandro Izzo. So they are very close together on track right now.
Yep, same livery.
Yeah, both Italians in the top row. So very, very close on times. Now, I do wonder, do these guys do endurance racing together? Are they teammates? Because they definitely look very similar in terms of those lap times. I wonder whether or not there was a potential teammate drafting as well going on. I believe I saw Carlo getting pulled along by one of the faster of those guys. So, potentially, that's the other thing. If you have a lot of teammates in here, you can use that to your advantage in qualifying, and then in the race, whoever's out in front, in this case at the moment it's Lorenzo, but we will see if that continues. But, in terms of how it is in the race, you've got Lorenzo and Alessandro. Alessandro can almost act like almost a blocker for Lorenzo, if he so wished. Obviously, we hope that the guys battle with each other. That's kind of the goal, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's a race. You still want to win. But if you're in teammates, maybe sort of for the first couple of minutes, you work together, try and build up a gap to everyone else behind you. And then sort of start to breeze off that way. almost doing a similar thing to what teams would do in Formula One and all of the other styles of team racing that we have, as Izzo now goes even quicker, almost into the 114s, very, very close to doing so, and has just said to Lorenzo, all right, mate, you wanna go slightly faster than me? Have that 2/10 quicker, go find it. But with the way that Lorenzo is, and that is a very dangerous off track there. Hopefully no one got caught up in that one. You want to be careful near the end of the session that you don't hamper anyone's final laps.
Yep, otherwise it could be starting from the pit.
Yeah, as qualifying is indeed over and done with. Anyone who is still on a lap can obviously finish that if they get round to the flag in time. I believe the only people still on laps as it stands right now is Benjamin Seiss, who is on our screen with a lovely looking P2 livery, I must say. I do love a nice simple, you know, 1 to 2 color dominant livery and then just like a splash of something else, you know? It's so nice to look at. It's just simple, you can follow it, it pops out enough. That might be one of my favorite looking P2s for the series right now. Now, I don't want to say I'm biased because there's, you know, you've got the what's that, like a falcon or an eagle on the side?
I mean, come on, you gotta... Is he still on the track? He's not on track, but when we get to see Leon again, I think he's running the Anstall Racing livery, which of course is obviously the best looking livery.
Commentators have to be biased. Yeah, commentators have to be biased to that one. I believe the only people that we're waiting on to finish now is... In fact, I believe everyone should be done in theory. I don't think Lorenzo got to the line in time.
STK assumes he has. But it's only 7 seconds left of the...
So he's definitely not making it to the line in time unless he develops some sort of hyperdrive. But in terms of a qualifying session, I mean, we saw what we saw. LMP2 cars very, very, very quick, as we expected. And it was about that 8-second gap in the end that I thought, in terms of the difference between pole on P2 and pole on GT. And I'm not sure if we have the full grid available to us. Or at least the results from qualifying.
Okay, thank you everybody. I know that we have slightly longer...
Just to see what the run... So the rundown then, as far as times go in LMP2. Alessandro Izzo will take your qualifying pole position, with his teammate Lorenzo there in P2, 2/10 off, so very closely fought battle there between the teammates. Benjamin Seiss slots himself between the other Leo Racing team member, so Benjamin Seiss again doing a little bit of a sandwich between the 3 Leo cars that we have with us today. Then we obviously have in P4, the other Leo car that I mentioned, Carlo. Followed off by Dylan Vanderlands for No Limit Sim Racing, again 6/10 off, and very close to what Carlo was able to do in terms of a lap time, actually, in the number 420. And P6, we do have Frank Smits for 5-Star Motorsport, 1.1 seconds off of the pole time, followed off by Max Voss there in P7, again 1.1 seconds. It's looking like it's going to be very closely fought for top 6 between a lot of different drivers. As we mentioned, Max Voss, we've got Sebastian in there as well, Van der Hoeven, and James Abram as well in P9. Mika will round out your top 10 with Leon P11 for the Anti-Stall Racing team, as you mentioned. The lovely livery when we get to see it out on track, with Brody Maynard behind Leon there, again racing in collaboration with Anti-Stall Racing. Aiden Young for Protocharge Sim Sport, with Miguel there in P14 for Turtle Racing. And then Bart and Kevin will round out the LMP2s with lap times that you would imagine they'll find maybe a bit more time through the race. Maybe just a little bit unlucky in terms of where they were able to get themselves. But Stefano, I'm not sure if Stefano was a spotter that potentially clicked race by accident and is actually not in the session, but no time for him, so we might have to get some confirmation on that as to whether or not he is in the session. But would we be able to take a look at the GT3 times just to confirm, see what those were for our top 10 as well? The main drivers that we're looking for that battle will be the top 4, maybe even top 5 and top 6 at this point, all separated by 0.6 of a second. Raul Suarez with a 1:23.3 is your pole position man, with Ryan Martin behind him 0.4 off. 0.4 off being the key for the next 2 drivers from that, P3 and P4, with Alessio and Fabio there. And again, the Leo Racing team looking pretty strong in terms of their driver lineup, managing to put themselves P3 and P4 in GT3 as well as P1 and P2 in LMP2. So it seems like that Leo Racing team has some pretty good talent under their belt. Tim Perry is there in P5 for Boosted Motorsport, with Thomas there in P6. 0.6 off what Raul was able to do. Luigi for the other Leo Racing team member in GT3, and David Contos there in P8. Carl in P9 with Adam Hedgecock in P10. Richard there in P11 with João Diaz in P12. Gurtza Gasecki, I think is how we pronounce that. Correct me if I'm wrong. But he is in P30. Yeah. With Christian Glamsetter there in P14. Sean Gardner, P15. Tony Weisshaft in P16. Lewis Grieg, P17. Elias Stromer in P18. Now, we should have a few more GT3 cars.
Sorry,
Martin Brendan in P19. Eli Singh in P20. Thomas Amos in P21 with Lars Van Ryn in P22. Rick Hansen, P23. Thomas Notto in P24. And a shout out, by the way, to our lovely safety car team. They're representing, I believe it's a lovely Mercedes livery, actually.
It is, yes. It's a custom-made Anderson Racing safety car livery, which we don't hope to see.
Hopefully not. But it does exist just in case we need it.
Totally, yeah.
And do we know who our safety car driver is for this?
I believe it could be George, who is also our head of race control.
Well, there we go. So, massive shout out, obviously, to him. It's not something that we necessarily need to do, but it is definitely a nice to have. And will definitely mean that we get a bit more orderly safety car restarts, I think. The iRacing pace car is interesting, I think is the words that you could use.
Yeah, it's a bit too
it's
slow.
Definitely, yeah. But as we line up onto the grid, it is an all-Leo front row, as we mentioned, with Benjamin Seiss being the only non-yellow P2 up front there. So, maybe he'll have to change the livery slightly to, you know, get himself into the lovely yellow scheme that we've got going on.
A reminder to all cars in both.
But I will say those LMP2s do look absolutely beautiful.
There they are.
Now, one thing that I am certain we will see is, as they all pull away for our rolling start lap here, is that the LMP2s and the GT3s will give themselves a bit of a gap to each other. So obviously to avoid any carnage into T1 if the LMP2s have some sort of disruption to their start, or, you know, if there's a big collision up front, then at least the GTs even can, you know, get through relatively cleanly, and they don't have to worry about sort of, you know, checking up and doing other restarts, so they can just get on with it. It's something that obviously these cars are used to being rolling started, so They don't really have good standing start clutches as opposed to the GT3s who don't really mind doing it. They don't want to, but I think it's a little bit easier for a GT car than LMP2s to get going on a standing start, hence why no standing starts here. It also makes everything a little bit cleaner in terms of, you know, just the general start of things. As we see our leader, the number 46 of Alessandro Izzo, leading the pack away and getting quite close to that iRacing safety car. It's got to be something that you're careful of. Make sure you don't ram into the back of it by accident. Don't want to end your race before it's not even begun. But Gerard, question for yourself, mate.
Yes.
Who have we got taking this one in LMP2?
I mean, Alessandro has, you know, he's been a favourite since he took part in our previous GT3 series when he was driving just the GT3. So, you know, my money's with him only because I know how he races. Now, Benjamin Sice, however, currently P3, also has a very good chance at this. But for me, it's between those two, unless something goes drastically wrong.
Fair enough. Well, you've heard it from himself. I don't want to say who I've got my money on, because I will probably end their race in lap 1, turn 1.
Yeah, I would do a GT3 prediction as well, but I don't really know many of the top ones. We've had Ryan in for a little while, so, you know, just because he's been loyal to ASR, I'm going to say Ryan.
Well, you know, it also helps that he does have that nice Scottish heritage as well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
you know, it's lovely to see. As we will see when Alessandro leads us all away. Obviously, can't go before the safety car is officially in the pit lane, so when he crosses the line, Alessandro can go. And I'm wondering if he's going to try and coordinate it with his teammates, so his teammates get the jump, and
Seems
out the
like
final corner we go. There it is.
that
all
was
of his teammates
that
tucking
was
in.
cheeky. Like by P2 there, that was really cheeky because he tucked in just before they went.
Yeah, potentially going 3 wide into turn 1. We go. Number 46 and number 5 all very close together. Everyone making it through, apart from that is Miguel.
And now we're going to have the GT3s coming as well.
But the GT3 start. Here we go. It looks like it's a pretty tame start from everyone so far. Raul manages to make it through nice and safe. Ryan Martin a little bit further behind. There's a little bit more action here with some of the other drivers. As there's a Mercedes spinning around off the track. Careful not to get back on track too aggressively, Eli. Gotta make sure that you can, you know, hold it steady. But yeah, not the start you're looking for if you're Eli Singh right now.
No, and unfortunately he does have fans in the chat that are currently watching him as well.
That's not a good look, is it? Not a good look if you're Eli Singh. But Alessandro Izzo, Lorenzo Castellani, Benjamin Sice, Carlo Labatti, and Dallin van der Lands all battling so close right now, with James Ebram, Frank Smits, and Max Voss all behind them. But Luigi off track there. I'm not sure if we can maybe get a replay as to what happened, but Luigi off on the sidelines. As here we go, going into... Just gets a little tap,
little love tap
from, I don't know who that is. What white, green, and black livery? Maybe was that a Mercedes? It looked like a Merc.
I think I know who it is.
Could have been David
I
Contos.
think it is,
indeed.
yeah.
So, yeah, not the start you're looking for if you're David Contos. That'll probably get looked at, but as we start seeing Kevin Burke after that initial incident, by the way, now having to make his way through GT3 traffic already. So he's going to get a little bit of experience, maybe ahead of the actual LMP2 and GT overlap. So maybe for Kevin, that's actually a thing that, you know, you can see as a bit of a saving grace. You know, you didn't get the best start, so now you can sort of just relax a little bit. But in terms of the actual pace as it stands right now, Carlo Labatti is trying his hardest to hold off Frank Smits behind him for P6. This is your battle for P6. Carlo obviously trying to catch up to the back of James Ebram as well. Carlo has dropped 2 positions currently, and we see James Ebram as well getting an amazing start up 4 positions from the start of this race, and on a rolling start, that's not easy to do. We're already seeing the lap times come in very, very, very close between all these drivers. Almost everyone into the high 116s, maybe the very low 117s. So I'd imagine that if it continues like this, we're seeing Alessandro being able to run away because he doesn't have anyone to worry about behind him because his teammate is currently battling with Benjamin Seiss. And then behind them, obviously, Benjamin Seiss is just focusing on, you know, who is ahead, as Dylan van der Lands is trying to catch up. But again, Dylan has to worry about the cars behind him. You know, if he makes a mistake, James is going to be right onto the back of him and is going to be trying anything he can to make that move done. Now, one thing we didn't talk about as well in the qualifying and the warm-up to the race, and something that maybe we should have talked about, is the way that the fuel is going to work in this series. Obviously, only an hour-long race, so we have reduced the fuel tanks a bit for all these cars, so it's 45% fuel limits for the GT3s and 65% for the LMP2s, which that 65% is currently being looked at. It may go up to 70, depending on, you know, how it works in terms of pit strategy. You know, if it's pushing the LMP2s to potentially go to like a 3-stop strategy instead of a 2-stop, then we will probably see that adjusted, I would imagine. But pretty safe to say, as it stands right now, that it will be a 2-stop guarantee for all the GT3s and for all of the LMP2 drivers out here on track, as Ryan Martin is now having to defend for his life from that Porsche behind him, that Leo Racing Porsche, as there's very much a big boy tow going on here. Ryan Martin pushes him all the way to the outside. Is Alessio going to be able to make it around the outside of turn 1? They are very close, and that was one heck of a move by Alessio to get himself up into P2 of the GT3 field. And Ryan Martin, you can imagine, is already trying to fight back the best he can further down the field here for P21 in GT3. We do have another battle. This is for, I believe, a battle for P20, yep. And both these drivers have actually lost out quite a few positions, so I would imagine these drivers, or at least that's what my timing screens is saying. I think it's only Luigi who's lost out a lot of positions, though. My timing screen, for some reason, was saying Thomas had lost 18, but I don't think that was right. But in terms of the battle, I think Thomas now sees Luigi as a car that I really, really want to try and get past. Very much so, as there was a incident being looked at. I believe that was between the number 7 and the number 18, which would have been Kevin Burke and Miguel, and Kevin did get the 10-second post-race penalty for that one. So no matter where Kevin finishes, we have to subtract 10 seconds, or sorry, add 10 seconds to his finishing time to figure out where it is he finishes. But action all over the place already here in the first round of our IMSA series. We have had 5 laps so far and already getting into some of the GT3 traffic. Here we go. This is where the races will start to get a little bit crazy, as there are battles absolutely everywhere. GT3 as close as ever, providing battles all across the track. Adam Hedgecock currently trying to hold off João Diaz for P8, while also trying to see whether or not he can get a little bit closer, as P9 and P10, P10 and P11 are also incredibly close, both Mercs, so gonna be very, very similar in terms of straight line speed. I believe Christian did manage to get the better exit. He's gonna look into turn 1, both cars a little bit twitchy under braking, and definitely trying to battle as hard as possible. Christian almost hits into the back of him, but manages to just about hold off, as already we're seeing this LMP2 traffic as it will cause an ebb and flow in the battles between LMP2, and we're seeing the detriment already to Mika's race off of that LMP2 catching him in the chicane and not being quite as fast. It meant that the guy behind him, Sebastian, is going to have to try and be very, very fast indeed. Gonna have to try and find any sort of space he can to make a move. Got to do it around the traffic as well. It's not easy to do. They know that there's going to be more traffic coming up in the next couple of corners, and because this next corner it's pretty much blind when you come out on the exit. You're pretty much going straight into it. On board now with Sebastian, gets a little bit of a view there as to just what it's like for this driver, seeing whether or not we can figure out, right, where are we faster than the guy in front. Van den Heuvel going to try and maybe look to send it up the inside with a 117.9 as his last lap, compared to the 118 of the driver in front. Not quite close enough yet, though, as there is a massive gaggle of cars here, all battling for 10th in class. And are we going to see a move be made here? Very, very, very close between all the drivers. Almost. Whew. A little bit of a flash of the headlights. I don't think he was too happy with it. That was Richard, but Tony makes his way through, gets the move done, and unfortunately for Richard, it does mean now he has to look behind him once more, as Sean is going to be on the offensive. Sees that maybe Richard is feeling a little bit weak right now, having been passed already by quite a few cars, as I believe this is our LMP2 leader also getting involved with everyone else. I believe that is indeed the number 46. So is the number 46 going to make things interesting here in these GT3 battles? We'll have to wait and see. I think Alessandro Izzo may have some LMP2 experience, so maybe makes this a little bit easier on these GT cars than otherwise would, and that's a huge send into T1 for the lap traffic. But Luigi here going into, speaking of sends into turn 1, makes that move look relatively easy actually on, I'm not sure who that driver was, but yeah, definitely makes that move stick. And again, all the LMP2 traffic right now causing all these battles to inflate and change as the time progresses, and Adam Hedgecock is not having an easy time of it right now. The car behind him, João Diaz, all over his gearbox. We're only 9 minutes into the race and we're already getting LMP2 traffic. That means we're probably going to see him another 5 times, interrupting all of the GT battles right now. And as we can just see, it's just constant. There is everything happening all at the same time, and it is very tough to try and focus on one specific thing. Right now it is very, very tough indeed, as Rick Hansen is trying to battle with Thomas to see whether or not they can make a move. Obviously the gap extended a little bit while there was P2 traffic involved, and then when the P2 traffic got out of the way, the gap has now reduced once again. So I believe we are looking at some of these drivers being a little bit quicker than others, as Adam Hedgecock is still having to defend here into turn number 1, and the car behind that, number 78, I believe that is Carlo, is very much going to have to find a way past the best he can. And I believe off of that LMP2 move, it did mean that João Diaz manages to find the space and send it right when Adam was trying to make his way out of the LMP2 cars. So lots of incidents under investigation with race control right now, as we would probably inspect. Obviously, there are a lot of cars on track right now. The track map is very hard to read. And it means that we're going to have a lot of people in the same place, as we can see on the track map for you. If you look at the top right of your screen, you've got everyone pretty much in the same half of the circuit. And then, like, no one else on any other part of the track right now. What it means is, for spectators who are watching, shout out to you guys, you get to see all the battles happening all at the same time, as Sebastian Van den Heuvel is going to try and maybe make this move onto Leon if he can. Leon in that lovely ASR livery, Sebastian as well in another similar looking ASR livery, but maybe with a bit more chrome. Now, I don't want to say anything about the number plates that Leon is using, but not the right colour if you're an LMP2.
Going on the post-race penalty there for car number 5, I think that is. Yes, number 5, who is Lorenzo. This P2 in class.
So, yeah, I'm not sure what happened between Lorenzo and car number 888, which is a GT of Richard. So, Richard having had some unfortunate battles, as I believe there has been a change for P3. Dylan van der Lands has managed to get past Benjamin Seiss, but all three of them very close on track together right now. You can see how close they are, and there's GT3 traffic involved as well. We're going to see potentially 3 wide here into turn 1 if they don't overtake the Porsche in time. Thankfully they did, and indeed Benjamin is going to go through, and I believe Dylan was thinking in the long game here of, all right, I'm gonna let him pass now, because then that way I'm not risking anything battling side by side into turn 1, where it is pretty tricky to keep it clean, as James Ebram behind them all is very much trying to size up a move on Dylan van der Lands. Was having to try and size up a move for Benjamin Seiss, but now obviously that has changed, so I think the tact that James is gonna have to try and employ may be a little bit different. We'll see as well what the driving style of all these drivers looks like. Obviously, in the LMP2, there are quite a lot of different ways to drive it. You can be quite aggressive, but your tires are going to fall off a cliff, or you can nurse it, as there is a huge puff of smoke there. I don't know what LMP2 that is, but I believe one of the LMP2 drivers is now right up in the battle here. I want to say that's Lorenzo. I think Lorenzo has had an incident, and indeed he has, and Benjamin Seiss is now all the way on the back of him. So we've got P2, 3, 4, and 5 in class, all battling pretty much on the same piece of tarmac for second place in class, while P1 of Alessandro has managed to go away from it all, and some very aggressive driving in traffic here between the two of them, of Aiden Young and I believe that's Brody Maynard. And Brody manages to capitalize a little bit on a mistake, but couldn't quite get the power down in time, and unfortunately, sorry, no, this is Aiden Young and Max Voss, my bad. So Aiden was trying to make the move on Max and unfortunately couldn't get the power down in time. That's so much to keep track of here. It is insane. But here is what happened to Lorenzo. Just locked up the brakes. So easy to do in these cars. Obviously no real assists. No, so, apart from, I think TC is the only one these LMP2s have. I believe they have a multi-TC, so they've got both slip and cut features. So that makes the traction control system a little bit more playful compared to what you can sometimes be used to from other series. But yeah, we do also have another we have another couple of drivers, as this is a little bit of a replay here from Leon, as he again brake bias a little bit too far to the rear and just locks up, spins around. That's going to be it. He's, you know, dropping a few positions after that one. There was also another incident that is being currently looked at as well, so I'm sure we will see a lot of those throughout this race. 16 minutes of this race has indeed gone, and there is a 10-second post-race penalty for one of those incidents. Car number 21, who is, I believe, in GT3? No, that's Bart in LMP2, actually. So P14 currently is Bart. So again, another 10-second post-race penalty. It's going to be pretty hard to keep track of all of them, as a move did get made here. Luigi trying to claw back up those positions that they lost off the beginning of this race, and starting to claw them back one at a time. And that's Lars Van Ryn. And a whole load of other GT3 traffic is involved here. I don't know what happened between the two of them, but there was a move made. I believe it was the Lamborghini of Elias made a move on the Porsche of Luigi. No, sorry, the Porsche of Gesecki, I should say. And Gesecki is now just sort of dropped down a couple more positions, I believe, just sort of trying to say, right, I can't really get in my flow right now. I need to just back off and let you guys through, and then the rest of it, you know, you guys can just go. As we see a couple of GT cars just having to try and take a little bit of a slip road, just off track, try and make sure they don't get involved in any incidents. But the battle that we had currently for P2 in class was, I want to say, a little bit short-lived between the top four. We had, what was it, second, third, fourth, fifth, all within like two seconds of each other at one point.
Yep, that's right.
And now they're back up to a pretty big interval.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
Alessandro is 10 seconds ahead, I believe.
Yeah, so Alessandro has always been out in front. Hasn't really been challenged, really, since Lorenzo made that mistake, which put him down within Benjamin Seiss's range. So I don't know, again, whether or not Lorenzo is going to sort of now change his strategy based off that. Obviously, he locked up going into turn one, so those tyres probably not going to feel the greatest. With these LMP2 cars, though, I wouldn't imagine the tyres be a massive issue. I'm not sure if there is a mandatory tyre change, as GT3 traffic once again is taking away from Lorenzo's race, but definitely adding to Benjamin Seiss's, and Benjamin is on the back end of Lorenzo. However, he can try and be cheeky with a bit of traffic, but he may just want to say, right, we're just going to follow each other through for now, and then when the opportunity presents itself, that's when I'll go. As that Mercedes is very much causing a little bit of issues. Obviously, being this a multi-class race, blue flags don't work the same way they do in F1 in any other series, and these GT3 cars don't really have to get out the way for the faster cars. It's on the faster car to overtake you safely and in a manner that is deemed respectful, as that's not very respectful. I don't know which LMP2 that was that just collected the Merc in the background, but that Merc is, I don't want to say it, but potentially out of the race with an incident like that.
Do I have a replay of that? I might have a replay of that. I'm not.
We are on board with Brody at the moment.
Oh, wow.
That is
Okay, that was
Brody
a-
just going off on the side of the track and
Yeah, that
deciding
wasn't there.
maybe he's going to do the Indianapolis Oval instead. You know, does he drive in our IndyCar series?
I'm not sure. That's a really good question. He's been with Anderson for a very long time, and he is also a fellow commentator as well. So, yeah, I'm not sure about that one.
I was going to say, if he does, maybe that's where the mix-up came from.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that that previous crash. I did get telemetry for it, so it didn't come up as a crash on my screen, unfortunately. But I'm sure the stewards noticed it, so we'll find out who it was very shortly.
Yeah, absolutely. But back on track here for P2. And again, Benjamin Seiss needs to really try and find a way to get past Lorenzo. And both drivers very, very quick in their own rights. And Benjamin is quicker on the last couple of laps. And, oh no, a little bit too aggressive there into turn one. Maybe brake bias a little bit too far to the rear. You saw he was very aggressive on the turn-in. Not sure if you noticed it, Gerard, but as he turned in, you saw the car snapped a little, and maybe he just couldn't really keep on track, and that was it. As we now jump on board with the battle for P9 here, 9th in class is Adam Hedgecock. Then we've got Christian Glamsetter and Tony Weisshaft there in P10 and 11 respectively. All very close on track. Adam is a driver that said last season in the GT3s that he wanted more people to battle with. Well, Adam, I think you got your wish, mate. Go have fun with it. You know, you've got a couple of people seemingly around your sort of speed, Christian Glamsetter and Tony. What are you going to do with it? You know, you've got you may have been granted it, so we'll see whether or not Adam has anything to say about that post-race, whether or not he enjoys the company that he's keeping right now, as there is a P2 who's potentially going to make this a little bit interesting. I think the P2 wisely thinking, no, actually, and I'm not sure if the P2 hit anyone there, but that was very close between all of them into turn one, as James Abram is trying to very much run away from the car behind him. Who is that? The number 78, actually. So is that the... That is Carlo. I'm getting very confused with all of the Leo car guys right now. All the numbers are blurring into one. I had a feeling that that was our leader for a moment. I was like, there's no way he's already lapping the traffic. Surely not. As very opportunistic move there from James Ebram on Andy. And, I mean, I get it. You want to try and, you know, get through as quickly and as cleanly as possible, but it was a little bit aggressive. I'm not sure if, you know, he made it through clean, but if Adam didn't notice him, then that could have been a horrendous incident waiting to happen. And I believe Adam has also dropped a position off of, in fact, dropped 2 positions off of what happened there in T1 that we didn't quite see the end of. As Tim Perry is battling with Thomas for P5, as once again, we have another bit of backmarker traffic also trying to get involved, and the LMP2 really just finding itself in a bit of an awkward position. Now, if the overtakes have been like this so far, I dread to think how it's going to be when we go to Long Beach.
Oh no.
This is already pretty chaotic. And as you can see, we're now 24 minutes through, so I would imagine we're going to start seeing our first few pit stops from our LMP2 guys, if we haven't seen them already. That's car number 78 and number 808. The car number 78 does have a drive-through penalty, so I don't know who 78 is. That is Carlo Labatti, and 808 is... 808 is Kyle in... I believe that was the Merc that we saw, so that was the incident that we saw in the background when we were spectating the LMP2 battle, of that Merc that was going sideways out of the final corner.
Yeah, no.
So
yeah.
That's what happened. So that is Carlo Labatti having a drive-through penalty for that incident. As we see once again, these LMP2 drivers need to be a little bit careful here that they don't end up in a situation where they're affecting the GT3 fights too much, as I'm not sure which GT3 that was, and that's Adam Hedgecock, sorry, but getting very close to the back end as we're seeing it 3 wide, a little bit of a tap there between Thomas and Tim Perry. Lorenzo trying to get through, made it through just about, and affected the battle a little bit between the Porsche and that Audi. I just want to say that in terms of positions as it stands right now, I believe in GT3 everybody has moved positions off the start. I don't think anyone is in the same place that they were off the start of this race. As we see Thomas go into the pit lane, and that's the number 78 of Carlo also into the pit lane, probably to do a drive-through, as all of the other drivers as well are into the pit lane. All of the LMP2s are in as well, so we'll see Alessandro try and get a good clean stop before he gets back out there on track one more time. James Abram and Benjamin Seiss are so far the only P2s out of this front running group, at least, who are continuing on for 1 extra lap. So I would imagine, seeing as everyone's pitting sort of roughly 26 minutes in, that we will definitely see a 2-stop strategy. I don't think anyone can push it for a 1-stop, but if someone has managed to save enough fuel to try that, then I wouldn't be surprised to see them take the win of this race in P2. As we're looking at the likes of now James Ebram and Benjamin Seiss, but that is James coming into the pit lane. Just saying that James does indeed have a 10-second post-race penalty for what happened between him and car number 888, who is Richard. So Richard has had a little bit of an unfortunate race, it seems, being involved in a lot of LMP2 incidents. So I'm not sure if The car 888 has a sign on his car saying "hit me," but it seems like a lot of the LMP2 drivers are magnetizing towards him. But Benjamin Seiss, again, going on one more lap. Now, I don't know if Benjamin Seiss has been saving fuel this entire time. Obviously, he's been pretty close to Lorenzo, so potentially he is going for a one-stop strategy, and I mean, we're even seeing him doing some extreme fuel-saving tactics. I believe that was a little bit of an endurance trick that can gain you an extra lap of fuel mileage without affecting your speed too much. So you put the clutch in, and then going into the braking zone, let off the clutch, and you're basically using the clutch instead of braking. You obviously still use your brakes, but the clutch seems to just slow you down more in terms of you can use the natural progression of the car to sort of just roll it through. But yeah, Benjamin Seiss does indeed go in.
I'm wondering how long is the overall pit time? It's
1 minute
1
and
minute
10 seconds.
So
mile out of 10 my perspective.
he's not going to quite make it to the 30-minute mark there, so he's not going to make it halfway through the race. Unless he gets that extra lap of fuel saving, in which case he might just one-stop it.
Well, that is probably going to be our story of the race then, moving forward, is can he... I mean, if we say that he's going to take, like, what, 1 minute and 10 seconds for his stop, right? He's already almost on 1 minute in the pit lane time anyway, so he's almost out. And he is out now, trying to use as little fuel as possible on the way out. I would imagine. Let's see what he does on the first lap as well, because I want to see, is he going to be fuel saving straight away? Because if he is, I would imagine he's trying for the one stop. We also don't know if this was, if Benjamin is here and actually thinking the long game, but yeah, already fuel saving out the gate, so I would imagine we're going to see Benjamin Seiss very much looking to one-stop this race, which is something that, I'm going to be honest, I didn't think it was that possible, but he's going to attempt it. So it must have been a borderline one-stop, but definite two-stop race. So I would imagine with 70% fuel, it would have been a definite one-stop race here for these LMP2 cars. But is it worth the, what's that, almost 20-second gap between himself and Alessandro? I think it is. I think it might be worth it, you know? Provided that gap doesn't extend too far and he can actually make it. We're looking at, as we mentioned before, around about sort of a minute's worth of pit lane time. Obviously, you won't lose exactly that amount, but you're probably looking at maybe 40 to 50 seconds worth of actual time loss. So as long as Benjamin Seiss can stay within a couple of tenths of Alessandro's lap times, then there is a good shot of him winning this race if he makes this a one-stop. If it is a two-stop, it will be a very, very, very quick splash and dash right at the end, you would imagine, as there was a big send there from Rick Hansen, and unfortunately doesn't make it work and is on the grass, and also driving on the grass again to maybe try and avoid some of these P2 cars as well, as I believe I saw Adam Hedgecock there in the grass just before that.
Yep.
All these LMP2 drivers very much trying to get themselves involved right now, as Eli Singh has dropped one position off of where they were, has now actually gained a position off of, I believe that was Adam going back to the pit lane, teleporting back to the pit lane, so I would imagine he is probably out of the race here. I'm not sure what happened with Adam, but yeah, definitely in the pit lane now and not on the track. So Lars Van Ryn and Goetze, one of our closer battles on track right now in GT3, if not our closest. As there seems to be another GT3 going very slowly there. I'm not sure who that was, or maybe that was a back marker. I believe that was of Sean Gardner, so I would imagine then that he was just sort of getting out the way, making sure that everyone was getting through nice and safely, nice and cleanly. The closest GT3 battle on track right now is the battle between Mercedes and Porsche. Gertz Gesecki and Lars Van Ryn. Lars currently having gained 10 positions off the start. Gertz having not really gained anything, but not really lost anything either. So P13 can be a pretty respectable result for him, I'd imagine. Now, I'm not sure what has happened with Aiden Young, but Aiden is now battling within the GT3 car traffic and is in the pit lane for a second time. So I don't know what has happened to that P2 car, but yeah, Aiden Young currently in the pit lane, and I'm not sure what that will be for.
Could it be the biggest undercut of the century?
I'm not sure how well the undercut will work here, considering you now have to fight through all the GT traffic.
Very true, very true.
But we will see. As we keep getting our race control, still looking into incidents all the way through this race.
So many.
And, you know, we've got to give a massive shout out to our race control for being able to handle a grid as big as this and a class like this, LMP2 and GT3 combined together. It is one thing that is definitely very, very special indeed. And, you know, they have a relatively small team, I believe, of race control.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
there's 5 of them sat in their box at the minute, all streaming to each other their own analysis and doing replays while one of the keeps watching the live stream. Yeah, it's crazy in there right now by the look of it.
Yeah, I would imagine that all of them probably have like 15 monitors laid out, just
Yeah.
trying to make sure that they can keep track of everything that's going on.
Yeah.
But Lorenzo and James Ebram, again, we saw James went a little bit later in terms of stop time. 1 lap later, was in the pit lane for less time than Lorenzo as well. So I don't know whether or not Lorenzo had some sort of incident, or in terms of just like they may have missed their box, or, you know, they just had a slower in lap because of traffic. But it looks as though in terms of actual pit stop time, they also had a couple of extra seconds held in the box by like 4 seconds. So potentially Lorenzo had a little bit of damage, which obviously can be fixed in the pit box while you're doing all your other regular scheduled changes. And once again, traffic seems to take away from James Ebram right now, as we are on board with the GT3 fight that's happening at the same time. And that's one thing, again, that we are mentioning that's just going to continue to happen throughout this race, is the ever-changing landscape of the GT3 guys and the LMP2 guys constantly going to be battling with each other. You know, are they going to be in fights while also trying to overtake each other?
Something strange going on here with Aiden Young, I think. He is
Oh,
yeah, he's
Young
on his
is
way out
back in
again.
the pit lane.
That's his 3rd time in the pit.
So I don't know.
I wonder if he got a drive-through for speeding and he had to go and do it. Because it didn't look like he even pitted in the box then, because it only took him 51 seconds.
Yeah.
Be nice if anybody in race control listening could give us a heads up on that one, see if that was the case, because that's really interesting.
Yeah, I would imagine that probably is what has happened. as going back to the GT3s, Porsche 1, 2, and sorry, Porsche 1, 2, 3, 4. Cross that off your bingo cards. The Fabio and Alessio, both Leo teammates right now, having to battle through their own class of traffic. That has been the P16 of Rick Hansen, going all the way off the grass to try and avoid the LMP2 as well. Speaking of Leo, how do you like your Leos? We've got P2 P1 in LMP2, and then P1 and P2 in GT3 all together on the same piece of tarmac.
Yeah,
so,
that's amazing.
All of the Leo guys, all on track, pretty much near enough in the same place on track. And, you know, we get all the class leaders together, which is lovely to see. And once again, GT3 traffic having to be very much aware of these LMP2 cars, that the closing speed on these LMP2 cars, it's so hard to judge, I think, as a GT driver, that over time throughout the season, I would imagine we will see this continue to get better and better for these drivers. But the closing speed, just look at it into the braking zones. There was a huge mistake there from Lorenzo locking up to try and avoid that Mercedes into the braking zone, and that has now backed up all these other P2 cars. So we've got a battle here for P2 that is definitely hurting up. James Ebram is trying to make the move. Let's see if he can get it done out of the chicane. They're going to be going, they're going to sandwich the 888 there, the Mercedes, and that Mercedes is trying to get to at least some part of the track. Going side by side here. Does James make the move? He does, but sends it way too deep, and is now having to fight off all of the other LMP2s that are lapped in class. And that was your one attempt to get past Lorenzo, and unfortunately it did not make it stick for now. And Dylan van der Lans has managed to catch up in all of this. So Dylan van der Lans is now right onto the back of Lorenzo Castellani, thanks to the mistake from everyone else. And the GT traffic obviously playing a bit of a factor in that as well. So I mentioned it before, the GT traffic here is going to play more of a part in the P2 battles than probably the GTs are playing. That the P2s are playing in the GT battles. I think because the LMP2s are obviously so much faster, when they're held behind a GT car, it's going to affect them way more than a GT car having to get out the way for an LMP2. You know, all this makes me think right now, Jaron, is that I am thankful we also don't have LMP1 on track at the same time.
It would be glorious. It would be glorious.
It would be glorious, but then we'd have to rename it from IMSA series.
Very true. Yes.
We would have to rename it from the IMSA series. But it would be an absolute madness to see the LMP1s here with the LMP2s and then the GT3s, because the gap we see between GT3 and LMP2 is about the same as LMP2 to LMP1 in terms of like speed difference. Obviously, depending on the track, that's a little bit different. I would imagine in a course like this, the LMP2s and the LMP1s are pretty similar pace-wise. Maybe sort of like 5 seconds quicker as opposed to like 8. But even still, like, the hybrid helps out so much, especially in these lower speed corners, as Dylan tries to make the move there on Lorenzo, gets pushed right up close to the wall, has to stick it the long way around the outside of turn 2, which will turn to the inside of turn 3. And while all this is going on, James Ebram saying, thank you very much, boys, for battling. I'm going to try and get myself involved. And now we've got a 3-way fight here for P2 in LMP2. All these drivers are wanting this to end, I'm sure. They're all wanting to get into P2 and wanting it to end as fast as possible, because this, I would imagine, is stressful right now for all these cars. You've got not only now, if you're Lorenzo, right, you've got to worry about the car in front of you, because that's the one you want to overtake. You've got to worry about a hard-charging James Ebram behind you. You don't have to worry about Tim Perry up the road, who, yes, nice guy, probably, but it's GT3 traffic, and you just want to get through. You want to, you know, push it as much as you can to try and overtake Dylan, and throughout all of that, the GT3 not really helping, getting caught right on the exit. And that means that James is, I think, running a little bit of a lower downforce setup than what Lorenzo's doing, because the straight line speed from James Ebram was absolutely insane there. That's not just draft in that pace difference. That's probably a lower downforce setup as well. The speed that James had over Lorenzo, insane. 8 kilometers an hour faster, by the way, in case you're wondering. I would try and convert that into miles an hour, but I can't remember the conversion rate off the top of my head. But yeah, 8 kilometers an hour faster in a straight line was James Ebram over what Lorenzo was able to do. And then the craziest thing is, Dylan van der Lande's another 7 kilometers an hour faster. So I don't know whether or not Lorenzo has some sort of aero damage and that's why he's not as fast in a straight line, but it's definitely seeming, though, that Dylan van der Lande's has a rocket ship of a car in a straight line right now. And in terms of the circuit, considering a lot of the corners rely on mechanical grip, that's sort of how you want to play it, I'd imagine. Take your car up low to do the tight twisty bits for mechanical grip, and then you can take off all the aero and it's still fine. Obviously, for some of the more medium speed corners like the chicane, you don't want to be having the car be too twitchy. But again, GT3 traffic causing a lot more battles to get closer. Battle for P10 in LMP2 between Frank Smits and Leon. And again, here we go. So many GT cars all battling together. This is still your battle now for P2 in LMP2. And Benjamin Seiss, look at him, he is in this battle now too. Benjamin Seiss has caught up, so we now have a 4-car battle in LMP2. Benjamin Seiss, our fuel-saving wizard. Is he going to be able to pull off this one stop? Because if he can, I would imagine that not only is he going to overtake all these cars, he's also going to overtake all these cars on track before he even has to worry about overtaking them through strategy.
I'm really hoping what he's done here is he kept it chill for a few laps, has saved himself an extra 2 laps. He's going to need 2 laps extra, I think, to do this. And then now he can just punch it with those extra 2 laps in the tank.
And the other thing is, as well, like, if he knows that everyone ahead of him still has to stop again, like, if he knows that it's a very, very close to a 1-stop, like, borderline, unless you're saving from the start of the race, difficult, then he's probably aware that these guys are on a 2-stop strategy right now. So he's going to be trying as hard as possible to put as much pressure on Lorenzo, on James, on Dylan, on even Alessandro, just by being close enough to avoid the pit stop switch, that he's almost in a situation now where he can sort of cruise. He doesn't have to be aggressive and try for the move. Obviously, he's a racing driver. He's going to go for it, isn't he? Like, he's always going to.
And let's not forget to mention that he did also have a spin earlier in the race. And he's made it all the way back up here.
Yeah, indeed he did. I wonder if that affected anything as well.
Well, it definitely gets your foot off the accelerator and saves a bit of fuel.
Well, yeah, that is true. That is true. Depending on how far you went forward as well, that is, yeah, it may have saved you quite a bit of fuel. But again, we're starting to see that gap between what Lorenzo's able to do, what James and Dylan are able to do. As, again, we mentioned it.
Come on, you can do it.
I'm going to put that on you this time,
yeah,
Gerard, on
sorry.
that one. That was on you. We were talking about how Benjamin had a little bit of a spin earlier, and then immediately, next corner, he's spun it again.
Perhaps he's watching the stream. Perhaps he knows we're watching him, so let's go flick over to someone else for a little bit, shall we?
Yeah. Let him just get back on to what he's doing. And, hey, I mean, this race so far has been absolutely mental. 46 minutes gone of our hour-long race here. We're on lap 36 for these LMP2 cars, and the GT3s, the GT3 leader, I'm trying to see, is on lap 32.
That's the GT3 pitting right there.
So that is João Diaz, who is now committing to the two-stop strategy. And I want to say Fabio Ponta in P7 in class for GT3 is also on the two-stop strategy. Did go and pit on lap 32 for the GTs, which would have been literally this lap. So Fabio Ponta is already pitting, so trying to get an undercut on all the drivers ahead of him. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Fabio was P2 with Alessio in GT3 at one point, was he not?
It rings a bell. I cannot remember, but it definitely rings a bell. Let's take a look at it there again, see if he did actually lose any places there. Yes, he has dropped 3 places.
So that is going to be based off the grid positions.
Yep.
But I think at one point we had a Leo 1-2. And as far as I'm aware, there were 4 Porsches in the top 4 in GT3 at one point. And there is only 1 out of the top 3 Porsches right now. Only one of them is the Leo car. So yeah, I would imagine then that Fabio is indeed committing now to this two-stop strategy and has pitted ahead of what Alessio was able to do. So that'll be interesting to see where he comes out. Alessandro Izzo, LMP2 leader in the pit lane, is committing to the two-stop strategy with only, what's that, 10 minutes left of the race. Well, 11 minutes of the race, plus
So
probably one more lap after.
I think he's pitted early, specifically to get the undercut there. I think he could have lasted a bit longer. Well, he definitely could have lasted a little bit longer.
So now, I believe if you're Alessandro, your goal right now, overtake Benjamin Seiss.
Yes, absolutely.
That's your goal. Because you're probably aware with how late Benjamin Seiss pitted. Yes, it was only 2 laps later than you. But he was in the pit lane for around about the same time as what your teammates were. So you can probably estimate he's taking on about the same amount of fuel. Is he also now on this one-stop strategy? I mean, he pit pretty much halfway through. Can he make it all the way to the end? Keep in mind he still needs to probably save 2 laps more than what he did in the first stint. And again, we don't know what Benjamin Seiss's fuel looked like at the end of his stint. So Benjamin could have potentially had 2 more laps of fuel left in him, but pit around that time to maybe hide that he's trying this one stop.
Well,
maybe tries to play that game. That is big brain if he did. Absolutely big brain if he did.
Well, James and Max have just entered the pit lane as well, so they are going to back up behind Alessandro again. And I don't think they're going to manage to catch him after this. I think they're going to get back to their original positions and probably stay there.
Very close.
Yeah.
Very close between Alessandro and I'm not sure which car that was. That was Ryan Martin in GT3. Well, I was going to say Alessandro did almost hit him coming out the pit lane, but Ryan obviously not that aware that there was a car exiting, or rather there was a car very close to him when he was exiting the pit lane. Maybe he was told through crew chief, but yeah, I mean, this race has been very interesting in terms of strategy as far as it's gone so far. Lots of these LMP2 drivers taking very different approaches, and James Ebram now up, well, I should say down into P8 from where he was, but up in terms of his overall grid position, has gained 1 off the start of this race. So that's always nice to see. And Lorenzo is in the pits, so that means that the only 2 people yet to pit in LMP2 is Dylan van der Land's Benjamin Seiss, and I believe everyone else we would imagine comes into the pit lane this time round. Carlo Labate, Mika are the only other ones yet to pit. So no, Carlo is continuing on for 1 more lap as well. So I'd imagine all the Leo guys are pitting 1 lap after each other, it seems like.
So Alessandro has got 8 minutes to catch Benjamin by 11 seconds.
But if Benjamin needs to pit one more time...
Exactly. If Benjamin needs to pit now, the entire thing's over for him, basically.
Yeah.
Like, his entire strategy has gone down the drain if he has to pit. So, let's take another quick look at what he's doing in the cockpit.
Well, he's not short shifting, but keep in mind within iRacing, short shifting doesn't really work.
No, because
as you would think it does, because it's based on throttle position for fuel.
Throttle position. So
let's see.
You let go of your throttle.
He's still
did.
For a very long time as well.
He also block changed straight down to third gear. I wonder how he did that.
Because it's a semi-automatic gearbox. By being like you are off the clutch, you can actually shift down very quickly, and it will show it as not coming down one by one.
Okay.
But it will come down one by one.
Curious.
It's just he does it so quickly that it won't really register. It's just because you can, obviously, when you're cruising like that, obviously the RPMs of the engine are dropping.
Yes, of course.
Kind of. In terms of at least the speed difference is enough to where you can down change a little bit quicker than otherwise. And Dylan van der Lands is now in the pit lane, so let's see, is Benjamin going to come into the pits, or is he going for one more lap? He's going for one more lap. Now, with 6 minutes left, you're looking at 5 laps, I'd imagine. 5 or 6, 4 or 5 laps, I think.
Yeah, and
probably
Alessandro...
5, obviously, with...
Alessandro's managed to cut down...
by another second.
Yeah, a second in 2 minutes. So, if Benjamin does this, like...
Second a lap.
I don't want to say it, but I think this is going to be the win of the season.
I mean, it's the first race, Gerald. We've got to hold it for now.
Exactly, it's the win of the season so far.
But I will say that if Benjamin pulls this off, I mean, we've got a lot to discuss if he pulls this off. A lot to discuss. Because that is going to be the heist of the century, I think. Yes, he started P3, but to potentially pull off a one-stop, I mean, that is brave.
But he did it all last season. He was the one that would do it every race last season in the GT3s. So obviously that practice here seems to be paying off. If he can last for the last 4.5 minutes.
And I don't want to say anything, but look at the cars who are ahead of Benjamin Seiss right now in terms of backmarker traffic. Notice how they're both Leo LMP2s?
Yeah.
And at one point he was in a sandwich between both of them.
Yeah.
So he is almost coming up to lap the Leo guys in LMP2. Obviously Alessandro is still like right behind him. Is still hounding him down a little bit. Last lap did go in favour of Benjamin Seiss though, so Benjamin is starting to pick it back up a little. But again, not by a massive amount, as there is a drive-through penalty for car number 98, so I don't know what happened there. 98, I would imagine. Normally I look at number 98 and immediately I look for a Porsche, however it is a Lamborghini this time. So...
drive-through for car 98.
Yeah, that is Elias Stromer in GT3. Currently in 17th position, so I would imagine he's going to drop down probably now. No, actually, I think he's got a lap ahead of the car behind him, so I don't actually think it's going to matter that much. He did lose on Rick Jensen according to my timing screens, but we will have to wait and see whether or not that is the case. The GT3 fight as it stands right now, Alessio Bernardi currently leading that one with Fabio now taking back the P2 for Leo. So Fabio was in P2 was out of P2 because of pit stops, not because of losing it somewhere that we didn't see. So that now confirms it. And Benjamin Seiss, you've got 3 more minutes, my friend. Can you hold off? Can you make this one stop of dreams work for you? Or is it all going to come to a bit of an untimely end? I don't want to say it, but I think it's just going to be too close, honestly.
Oh, I mean, as long as he crosses that line, he doesn't even have to finish with his engine on, you know? As long as he crosses that line, that's all that matters. He could clutch in and coast over it, for all we care.
I'm very much waiting for the Toyota-style heartbreak. If any of you watch the World Endurance Championship,
yes,
you'll know exactly what I mean. Of where final lap, and big off for Alessandro Izzo, and that may potentially give Benjamin Seiss all of the things that he needs. I don't know what happened, but Alessandro Izzo, all of a sudden the car got loose and massive incident into the wall. That is going to be very much damage to the rear end of that car.
Just got to quickly reverse that because it didn't come into my telemetry, so I'm going to have to reverse it, unfortunately. So let's take a look what happened there.
So all the way on the outside. Can we get maybe this on board? Of a
yeah,
gyro?
Totally.
Just because I want to see if he's steering maybe just a little bit too much.
Went over the grass.
It's the grass.
Oh, no.
He goes far too wide to avoid his own Leo teammates in GT3.
Saved it incredibly well.
I wouldn't want to be a Leo GT3 driver right now. I wouldn't want to be Alessio or Luigi because I believe Alessandro is going to be having a few words after that, which, you know, I don't think it's on the GT3 guys, but obviously he's going to be a little bit frustrated with that one, especially if he doesn't get P1 now.
And this has moved Benjamin up to 14 seconds away with 35 seconds remaining.
So this is it. This is white flag, final lap.
That was Aidan Young off the track there as well.
All right, Benjamin Seiss, how much fuel do you have, my friend? Do you have enough to make it? Now, I'm not going to say anything. Maybe I will. So you know how I was saying I didn't want to say who my pick for the race was?
Go for it.
Yeah, I think my initial thought was Benjamin Seiss, only because I really like that livery.
I mean, he was one of the two that I thought would get it.
Yeah, I think Benjamin Seiss just started in a really nice position. But here we are, timer has gone down, so anybody ahead of Benjamin Seiss, when Benjamin crosses the line, will have to do one more lap. So, Brody, you might want to let off. And indeed, that is what Brody does. Does he manage to get him just to the line? He does, so Brody doesn't have to do another lap. But
he's done it.
Benjamin Seiss manages to pull off the one stop. The only driver in the grid, both GT3 and LMP2, who managed to pull off the one stop. And he only won it by 16 seconds.
Wow.
Now, keep in mind, Benjamin Seiss had, what, I believe he had 2 or 3 spins?
Wait, 2 on stream. Yeah, it was two spins on stream. So, if he did have any more, we didn't see them, but I don't think he did.
And Alessio will take your win in GT3, followed off by his Leo teammate in Fabio Ponta. And again, Alessandro Izzo does cross the line now for, or rather had already crossed the line for the LMP2 P2. And that is Dylan van der Lands for P3, James Ibram in P4 for LMP2, and then Frank Smits in P5 for LMP2. Sebastian van den Hoeven is going to be crossing the line any second now for P6, along with Lorenzo Castellani. That was a battle that was very close near the end, separated by a second. Carlo Labatti as well crosses the line for P8. Max Voss in P9 for LMP2. And I believe that is all of our LMP2 finishers. In terms of GT3, your top 10 would be Alessio Bernardi, Fabio Ponta, Raul Suarez, Tim Perry, Thomas Mosek, Ryan Martin, David Contos, Christian Glamsetter, Tony Weisshaft, and then João Diaz. Again, this is provisional. Obviously, we have some time penalties to apply, so potentially this won't be how the actual final standings look, as I believe that was the qualifying results we have on our screen right now.
Oh, my apologies.
So, indeed, as we said right now, this is all provisional. So, if any of the GT3s have a 10-second penalty, obviously we'll have to push them down a little bit. So I would imagine we'd look at, if Raul had one, obviously he would drop down behind even Thomas Mosek. So he'd drop 2 positions if he has one. Obviously, if he doesn't, then that is, how it is. But yeah, Adam Hedgecock was indeed a retiree partway through that race. But your screen is there as we ran through the top 10, as I say, all provisional for now. We'll run over through the rest of our LMP2s as there's a nice little group of cars there all on track cruising together. I'm not sure what team that is, but that's always nice to see, isn't it? Always nice to see a little bit of a parade of cars. But in terms of your LMP2 standings, obviously provisional, as we say. There could potentially be some changes, but Benjamin Slice did take the win after that very impressive one-stop, with Alessandro Izzo finishing P2. Dylan van der Lands taking P3 with James Ibram in P4. Frank Smith P5. Sebastian van den Hoeven in P6. Lorenzo Castellani in P7. Carlo Labatti in P8. Max Voss in P9. Mika Goretza in P10 with Leon Elvworth in P11. Brody Maynard in P12, Bart Frostein in P13. Miguel there in P14 with Aiden Young in P15, and I believe Kevin Burke with a DNF, and Stefano, I believe, not even starting the race. So that is gonna tell us our race results for LMP2. For GT3, again, all provisional, as we mentioned. Alessio Bernardi did take your win from Fabio Ponta. Raul Suarez finishes your podium with Tim Perry, Thomas Mosek in P4 and P5. Ryan Martin in P6 with David Contos in P7. Christian Glamsetter P8, Tony Weisshaft in P9. João Diaz P10 with Luigi Nespalerno in P11. Lars Van Ryn P12. Gertz Gasecki in P13. Carl Knudsen P14. Martin Brandon in P15 with Lewis Grieg in P16. Eli Singh does manage to finish in P17 with Sean Gardner in P18. Looking a bit further down, we had Richard there in P19 with Thomas Amos P20. Thomas Nato in P21 with Elias Stromer P22. Rick Jansen in P23. And then Adam Hedgecock, as we mentioned before, being a little bit of a DNF there down in P24. And that pretty much wraps it up in terms of race results. But we do have the man of the hour from the LMP2 series, Benjamin. Welcome in, mate. What a race from your point of view. The one stop that we weren't sure if it was going to work, but you managed to pull it off, and I mean, tell us about it.
I mean, yeah, I did do all the calculations beforehand, like yesterday evening. Seeing how much fuel I needed per lap and how many laps I can do per stint. And I saw that I was able to do 24 laps with like 2 liters each lap. And then thank God the total race lap time, the lap amount was like 46. So I just about made it. But yeah, good strategy. Wins you the race, even though you did not drive that well.
Yeah, I mean, we did see obviously a few mistakes, especially into turn 1. I'm not sure if you can say sort of how difficult that turn 1 is in these P2 cars. Obviously, we know that the prototypes are a little bit loose, or at least can be. So I'm not sure if that was anything to play there, but
yeah, turn 1 is definitely tricky, especially if you have if you have multiple cars in front of you and they all have to brake a bit earlier, and so that you have to brake even earlier, you have to put the brakes even harder, and that made me spin because I put too much brake pressure into the car. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that I think we saw a lot of. We saw a lot of P2s getting not necessarily caught off guard by traffic, but definitely making a few mistakes with the traffic involved. And so from a driver's perspective, what does that sort of look like as a driver of a P2 when you come across these backmarker traffics? Like, are you thinking in a slightly different way about the GT3s compared to sort of if you were, say, for example, you were battling or overtaking a backmarker in the same class? Like, are you thinking about it in a slightly different way, or are you just still very much like, I need to get past as quick as possible?
Generally, you hope that you can overtake them in the straights, and if they're like when in that like just in the braking zone, you hate to see it. Like if a GT3 in front of you in the S's, you have to wait like 3 seconds before you can overtake them after the S's. But generally, yeah, you just hope that you get through there the quickest, and if it's too dangerous, you just stay behind and just take the 1-2 seconds.
Yeah, and obviously that is one thing that I believe will be a bit of the story of this series moving forward, is going to be how people deal with the multi-car aspect of it. Obviously, two races happening at the same time on the same track is pretty hard to keep on top of. So again, mate, you did an incredible job in the LMP2 class and pulling off the one stop that we didn't think was possible. We thought was going to be very close to it. But you made it work. Yeah. And again, hey, if you can do that all season long, I mean, you're looking pretty good for the championship win already. So, yeah, I mean, congratulations to you, mate. Absolutely amazing job. And before we let you go, obviously, you know, is there anyone you want to sort of give a shout out to? Anybody sort of behind the scenes that helped you with this?
No, it was all by myself. I calculated it all by myself. But yeah, going from the F1 series, the 2 seasons that I went joined here and won them, it's glad to be back here in ASR in the LMP2, and I'm glad I got the win.
Yeah, awesome stuff, mate. Well, we'll make sure to send out the champagne on that one as well, so you can enjoy that. But yeah, mate, it's absolutely awesome to see you on track, and again, congratulations on the win, mate.
Thank you.
But yeah, I think that's going to be about it from us here at Anti-Stall Racing. That was our IMSA series, our first round of our IMSA series, and again, it was an absolute mental race. There were lots of spills, lots of thrills. And we can't wait to be back again next week for round number 2. And Gerard, mate, I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm imagining you're excited as well.
I'm very excited for next week because it's my favourite track.
Oh yeah,
it's at the Watkins Glen.
I'd imagine that's going to be mental.
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be absolutely amazing. I mean, many of these guys here will have raced the Watkins Glen Endurance, so. Yeah. You know, it's quite a well-practiced track, and it is generally an iRacing favourite, so I'd expect it to be a really, really good one.
But yeah, that's it, as I say, from us here. We can't wait to see you again for Watkins Glen, and honestly, let's just go racing again. Like, I want another one.
Yeah.
Like, can we just get another one, like, right now?
Well, we will be back on Monday. Yes, Monday, with our IndyCar series kicking off straight away right here in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And then on next Tuesday, we have our brand new series, the Touring Car Series. Let me just remind myself where they're going. They will be going to Brands Hatch, you know, the absolute home of Touring Car. And then again, next Friday, you can come and join and watch this IMSA excitement all over again. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you to the racers. Thank you to the race control team especially, because I think they now have a massive list to go calculate. And also, Ava, thank you very much to you too. Always a pleasure commentating with you.
Absolutely, mate. It is an absolute joy. But yeah, that'll wrap it us from up here. And we'll see you next week.
Goodbye, everyone.